The St. Mary's the Virgin Production Studio presents to you the next in the series of Ministering to the Whole, a presentation by Dr. Alex Gardner titled Managing Your Mental Health During COVID-19.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. I am excited to have been asked to share my thoughts regarding mental health during these uncertain times. I am also glad that the church committee agreed to include mental health in this series of presentations, as mental health and well-being is often not given quite enough attention when discussing overall health. A few of the reasons I suspect for this are that firstly, mental health is not prioritized highly enough within Jamaica and the larger Caribbean on a whole. But secondly, and more importantly, there remains a lot of shame, pride, and stigma regarding this topic. It is a personal topic that carries with it much vulnerability. And within this vulnerability, there is discomfort. The 3 points that I will focus on today are taking a closer look at important risks that increase the likelihood of experiencing anxiety or depression during this pandemic, as well as tips to prevent either of these two outcomes from occurring, should you recognize these signs. Therefore, I will be speaking about recognizing the signs of depression before it is too late, creating a space to allow for and manage high levels of worry and anxiety, and being creative with our coping, since our usual strategies, for example, going to the movies, going to the gym, are unavailable during this time. The most common challenge that I often hear from clients who have been referred to me for depression is not recognizing the warning signs when they occur. More often than not, by the time one can name their experience of depression, they are usually experiencing mild to moderate depression. One of the challenges with depression is that it is sneaky. It often begins with subtle changes at first, which build into more consistent and stable patterns of change as it increases. And it usually isn't until depression begins to significantly impact one's functioning when someone notices that their mental health is being impacted. Another challenge with depression is that there are several of us within the general society that are at more heightened risk of experiencing depression in response to environmental difficulties. This vulnerability can take many shapes. For example, having a genetic predisposition, meaning having a parent who has experienced clinical depression, or having a neurological or a personality type of vulnerability. Finally, depression often looks very different and wears many faces, and what we are often far more familiar with is what we call clinical depression compared to the far more common experience of a depressive episode. Clinical depression refers to extreme experiences where someone, for example, is unable to get out of bed for a week or has lost significant weight from not eating for a substantial period or has lost a sense of their own identity. On the other hand, a depressive episode, I am referring to someone experiencing for usually 2 weeks or more low mood or a loss of interest in enjoyable or pleasurable activities. Now, the interesting thing is, though these two experiences, that is clinical depression and a depressive episode, are different, having a depressive episode, that is, having a change in low mood and or loss in enjoyable activities for longer than 2 weeks qualifies you for a mild to moderate diagnosis of depression. However, because we often do not pay attention to these shifts in our mood and interests because we are just too busy trying to survive the basic necessities of life, we miss these experiences of depression. Unfortunately, men are often more likely to have difficulty noticing these changes in their mood, and so it may not be surprising then that men between the ages of 20 to 40 are at greatest risk of successfully committing suicide because they tend to use more lethal means. However, it is important to note that women are more likely to attempt suicide but not to carry it through to completion because they are more likely to engage in self-harm rather than suicide. The big take home from knowing this is, of course, paying attention to ourselves and our feelings and taking time to identify how we are feeling in response to the day-to-day changes and uncertainties that are occurring in our lives at the moment. So, what do I mean by being intentional with noticing your feelings, moods, or shifts in your motivation? Well, as you are listening to this talk, take some time to notice how you are feeling by trying to focus on that experience within your body right now. Do you notice yourself feeling more tired or heavy at this moment compared to the beginning of this talk or even at the beginning of the day? Do you notice yourself feeling a bit more on edge since speaking a bit more about depression? Do you have a big lump in your throat or find it hard to swallow at this moment? We are always experiencing feelings at every point in the day. The challenge is we are not always aware or mindful of these feelings or how we are interpreting and responding or failing to respond to these shifts in our mood throughout the day. So my big first tip is to find a comfortable space in your home and check in with yourself for about 10 minutes each day. Ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? It is important to put a name to this feeling. For example, by saying, I feel low or I have no energy, I just feel so lethargic. Next, it is important to identify what you are experiencing in your body to indicate that you are feeling low. It may be, for example, feeling a heavy weight on your shoulders or not feeling motivated to have a shower in the morning. Next, it is important to identify your thoughts. What are you saying to yourself in these moments? And do you notice the flavor of these thoughts? That is, are they overly negative, self-critical, hopeless, helpless, or pessimistic? You may have noticed that these are the warning signs of depression. So it is important that you look out for feeling low or lacking interest in engaging in your usual activities, feelings of irritability or feeling highly frustrated at small or minor changes, eating less than usual, sleeping less than usual, or eating or sleeping more than usual, noticing a lack of interest in the near or long-term future, noticing that you are feeling empty, are moving slowly, or just feel as if there is no point, not feeling particularly motivated to engage in your usual routine. So, for example, brushing your teeth, washing your hair, or even basic self-care activities. Or notice any sporadic or rapid changes in your mood. For example, going from really excited to really flat within a short period of time. If you are honestly assessing your feelings and noticing that you are experiencing most of these changes, the first thing to remember is that there is no shame in admitting this. These experiences can happen to anyone as depression does not discriminate between individuals. Secondly, it is important to get in touch with a loved one, whether in your home, over a phone, or over a video conversation, though in person or over video are preferable, and let them know how you are feeling and why you are feeling this way. There is no shame in reaching out for help when needed. Actually, the most courageous thing you can do is to reach out. It takes a lot more courage to reach out to someone in times of need than to stay alone and hold all of your problems to yourself. Finally, if you are unable to get in touch with a trusted loved one, it is important to immediately contact an emergency service if it feels like life is just too much to handle at this moment. There is always value and purpose on the other side of depression, and you will be able to make it through if these feelings are overwhelming you or if you are currently feeling overwhelmed in this crisis. You just need a little support. It is also important as a church family to bear in mind those individuals who may live alone, are older, or at greater risk. For example, those who are immobile, have maybe lost a job or a family member, have a disability, or maybe not able to access medication, and check in with them. Setting up a call-in system for even a brief 20 to 30-minute call with your neighbor, any vulnerable member, or with sick and shut-in members is important. While we are physical distancing, this is an important time to keep our connections as best as possible, as you may never know how much even a 15-minute check-in may brighten someone's mood or show someone that they are remembered and cared for. Now, let's turn attention to the second important point with regards to being able to appropriately cope with ongoing worry and uncertainty. As Auntie Diane said in the previous talk, there is certainly a lot of worry with regards to how COVID is affecting our families and loved ones in the present moment. But there is also a great deal of uncertainty with regards to the long-term implications of COVID on our jobs, our healthcare system, our extended family, and our economy on a larger scale. As Dr. Knight Rees mentioned in her talk, the only thing right now that is certain is change and uncertainty. And that is scary. Not knowing what tomorrow brings for our loved ones or our livelihoods is scary. Not knowing if we'll be able to take care of our families if we lose our jobs, and just not knowing when there will be some form of reprieve is scary. Acknowledging these worries is the first step in identifying the anxiety that comes along with these worries and better coping with both. When life is uncertain and stressful, our first inclination as human beings is to worry about it in order to try to find some resolution or to solve the problem. We are trying to regain some form of control by attempting to predict the best way out of a difficult problem. This is a normal and natural process for us. However, during times of great unpredictability, worry can have several negative side effects. For example, worry can result in greater amounts of stress, higher levels of anxiety, so having difficulty breathing, difficulty concentrating, or even having panic attacks, difficulty problem solving. It can result in greater physical tension, difficulty breathing, so our respiratory problems, and difficulty with our heart, so cardiovascular problems. It can also disrupt the quality of our sleep. So how do we better manage our worry so it does not lead to a lot of these negative side effects? Again, The first step is taking the time out to be mindful of our thoughts and feelings and identifying that we are feeling anxious or worried in any given moment. So, we are seeing a recurring theme of taking time out to attend to our thoughts and feelings. However, instead of immediately dismissing our worry or finding some distraction to forget about it after we identify it, it is important to have a look at our worry and identify the specific source of the worry. By having a better look at the worry, we can determine what aspects of our worry are beyond our control and what aspects of our worry are within our control. This helps us to get a better and more specific sense of our worry so that we are in a better place to focus on the parts of the worry that we can act on and those parts of the worry that are important to let go of. Often, the greater challenge is letting go of the worry and uncertainty that is beyond our control. Here, I extend on a few of the strategies identified in the previous talk regarding refocusing your brain and recommend the following 5 strategies which we will speak about in a bit more detail. With regards to limiting the amount of stressful content that you are receiving during the day related to COVID, while it is important to stay informed, it is also important to not have your mind constantly tuned into the worries of the world and constantly playing these around in your mind, even when you are not actively aware that this is happening. Therefore, limit the amount of stressful news per day. For example, maybe only listening to the morning and evening news and only major announcements throughout the day rather than actively listening to the news all throughout the day. With regards to the second strategy, setting aside time to worry. Very weird, I know, but this taps into the important strategy of acknowledging, normalizing, and validating the worry. Setting aside time to worry means that instead of mentally stewing with these issues all day within your mind, you are setting an allocated period of the day, of course, not within the last couple of hours before bedtime, to get these thoughts out of your mind and not occupy too much of your thoughts. During this time, allow yourself to worry about whatever it is that you want to worry about. And I find it helpful to get my thoughts out on paper for this specific period of time. However, after the allotted period of time, usually no more than 20 to 30 minutes, you put this down and physically and mentally move away from this activity to something that is more relaxing and enjoyable. During your worry time, this third strategy of challenging your worry becomes relevant. It is important to have a deeper look at these worries to examine whether we are applying facts and realistic thinking to our thoughts or whether these worries are mostly driven by fear. Notice I say realistic thinking and not positive thinking, as being blindly positive or naive to our current situation is definitely not helpful. Instead, combating our minds from running wild with fearful thoughts by applying facts and logic is more appropriate. Challenging fear-based thinking with more realistic and helpful thinking is a useful skill to continue attempting during your worry time. This is why it is important to arm yourself with the facts and knowledge about COVID and filter out any of the noise and misinformation. If you are unsure, I refer you to Dr. Knight Reese's talk where she speaks about the facts versus the myths of COVID. If you find that your worries are realistic and probable, then problem solve as best as possible and let go of those parts of your worry that are beyond your control. Here, the fourth strategy of accepting your worry becomes important. Instead, try to shift your attention away from your worry to activities that are enjoyable, relaxing, or inspiring. This could be a good opportunity for you to re-engage with something that you find helpful to calm your mind and put it at ease. It may be something relaxing like listening to music, doing yoga or Pilates at home, reading your favorite scripture or psalm, focusing on attention to things that you are grateful for, watching comedy, thinking of a new recipe you can cook. Whatever is personally enjoyable for you. It is important that this period of time is something specific, something that can be easily done, is safe for your long-term physical health, so drinking more beer or wine probably wouldn't count as an activity, is something that easily fits within your schedule of other tasks, and something that you can make an easy habit of. Setting a specific routine to do this and being intentional in scheduling this time within your day will be extremely important. And finally, the fifth strategy, try not to be too worried or overly anxious or hard on yourself or feel too defeated if you notice your mind drifting back onto some of the worries. That is okay. That is what idle minds do. Simply remind yourself that you will have that allocated amount of time the next day to address whatever the issue is and go back to focusing your attention as best as possible to your enjoyable, relaxing, or inspiring activity. It is often important to have a range of these and not to be too discouraged if you find it hard at times, but to continue giving it a go. Finally, I want to quickly switch gears to speaking about why being creative with our coping is particularly important during this difficult time. Getting creative with our coping is important because our usual go-to ways of coping with stress in our lives are not available to us during this pandemic. For example, I know a lot of us are struggling with adhering to physical distancing, not being able to go to the office, not leaving our homes unless we have to, or not catching up with friends or family over dinner or drinks. Not only do these restrictions block us from our natural need to connect with others who are important to us, but they also disrupt our natural social lives. This is really difficult, especially for the more extroverted ones among us. However, within these restrictions, there are opportunities. There is opportunity for still recommitting to the things that are important to us and fill our lives with meaning. This pandemic challenges us to think a bit more creatively about how we can find other, more accessible but safe ways to cope with the current circumstances. We all need to carve out time for ourselves and find activities that ease our minds, relax our bodies, and fill us with a sense of fulfillment and meaning. It may be scheduling more video or phone conversations with others we have not heard from within the week. Like Auntie Diane said, it may be refreshing our bodies by doing more physical exercise at home. It could be committing to doing a task that you thought you never had time to do, like teaching yourself a new skill, learning more about the Bible by reading a section each week, learning new recipes to cook or bake. Or it could be simply making time out to connect with yourself in a deeper way by reflecting on your life and discovering new ways for new and different things within your life. Now more than ever, making time to be creative with our coping will help us to continue to show up for the things we have to do in life, for the people in our life who are most important to us, and for our own well being. Being creative and thinking differently will not only help us to get by with the daily tasks of life, but will help us to better cope with the ongoing challenges and to face the long-term uncertainties presented by this pandemic. So, in closing, I want to leave you with a favorite quote of mine from a famous American psychologist, Abraham Maslow. In any given moment, we have two options: to step forward into growth or to step back into safety. Despite the threat of this pandemic, there is opportunity that allows you to keep a sense of calm and control for yourself and for your family. It begins by being mindful of your mental health, by checking in how you are feeling and thinking and noticing any shifts in your mood, energy, or motivation. By arming yourselves with facts about COVID and filtering out the noise and worry about this pandemic, and recommitting to becoming creative with your coping mechanisms, taking time out for yourself and committing to maintaining your relationships with your family, friends, and wider church community. Thank you for your time. Take care of yourself and each other. Good night.